In this video, we're going to cover two sets of notes. The first set of notes is about writing equations of a circle in standard form, center and radius. So, a circle is a set of points in a plane equidistant from a fixed point called the center. The standard form of a circle is written using the center, and the ordered pair for the center is h, k, and the radius, which is represented with r. This is the standard form equation for a circle. In parentheses, you have x minus h, which is the first point of the center, squared, plus y minus k, which is k is the second part of the center, squared, equals the radius squared. One thing we'll have to notice, and I'll bring it up over here again, is in this equation, notice that these are subtraction signs. Okay, that's important. So when we're looking here, we're going to look at this example. So some things to remember. When given the center and radius, we're going to plug in for h, k, and r. So in our equation, h, k, and r will be replaced with numbers. Be careful, because the center is technically being subtracted in standard form. As I said, there's a subtraction sign, and I'll show you how that affects our answer. Do not forget that the radius is squared. And when we have to graph these, we're going to plot the center first, and then use the radius, because remember, the radius is the distance from the center to the edge of a circle, to go up, down, left, and right from that center. So looking at this example, it has a circle with a center of 2, -5, and the radius is 3. Okay? So what we're doing here is we have to plug in, this would be h, this would be k, and this would be r, into our standard form. Now, the subtraction comes in because if I do x minus h is 2 squared, plus y minus, since k is a -5, it's really minus a negative number here. And the radius is 3 squared. So minus negative is what makes it a plus 5. So some students like to remember that it's like thinking of the opposite of what they give you. If it's a positive 2 in standard form, it's going to be minus 2. If it's a -5 in standard form, it's going to be a positive 5. So when you write it out, plugging in h and k into our standard form, the minus negative is how you can see where the plus comes in. Also, you have to square the radius, so 3 squared is where 9 comes in. So the equation for this circle that has a center of 2, -5 and a radius of 3, that is the equation we would be looking for. So when I go to graph this, I would first plot the center, so 2, -5, so I put my point at 2, -5. And since the radius is 3, and remember, radius is the distance from the center to the edge of a circle, I would count 3 up, 3 down, 3 to the left, and 3 to the right of my center, and then carefully draw in the best that I can my circle. Let's do a few more examples here. So this one says, write the equation of a circle that has a center of -5, 6. So remember, that'd be h, that's k, and the radius is 4. And then we're going to graph it. So remember, x, it's always opposite. So it's minus h. Well, if h is -5, minus -5 turns into a positive 5. So it'd be plus 5 squared, plus y, if k is 6, it'd be minus 6 squared, equals the radius squared. Radius is 4, 4 squared is 16. So that's our equation. If we want to graph this, first I plot the point, the center, -5, positive 6. So -5, positive 6, and then the radius is 4, so I count up 4, down 4, right 4, and left 4. And carefully draw in the circle as best as we can. So now let's do the next one. The next one says write the equation of a circle with a center of 5, -8. Again, this is h, this is k, and the radius is r. So we want to plug it in, keeping in mind that h and k are going to be the opposite of what we're thinking here. So x, since h is 5, it'd be -5 squared. Plus k is -8, so minus -8 changes it to +8. So y plus 8 squared equals, well, if my radius is 2, 2 squared is 4. So it equals 4. So to graph this one, first we plot our center, 5, -8. And it has a radius of 2. So we go 2 up, 2 down, 2 right, and 2 left, and draw the circle as best as we can. The last example, center is 0, 2, so h, k, and the radius is 1. Now this one's a little interesting because h is 0. So oftentimes we'll be asked, do I write +0? Do I write -0? What do I have to write 0 at all? And the answer is if it's 0, you don't have to write it at all. So you would just leave, it's just going to be x squared. You're not adding or subtracting anything to that x because 0 does not change that. Now y is a +2. So y minus 2 squared, because remember it's opposite of what you're thinking, equals the radius is 1. 1 squared is 1. So when I go to do this, I'm going to plot 0, 2. And if the radius is 1, I go 1 up, right, down, and left. And I draw that circle. So now, you might be asked to work in the other direction. So, when given the standard form equation of a circle, you can find the center and the radius. So sometimes they'll give you the equation that we were just learning how to write, and they'll ask you from that equation, what is the center and what is the radius? So we're just working backwards from what we did. Again, be careful because h and k is subtracted, so we have to do the opposite of what that looks like. Also, we cannot forget that the radius is squared. So we have to, in order to get what the radius is, we have to square root that number. Okay? So, in this example, this is the equation they gave us, and this is our standard form equation. So, we have to take the opposite of each. So since this is a +8, h, the first point in our center, is going to be a -8. It's going to be the opposite. For k is a -10. So remember, opposite of -10 is going to be a +10. That's where the k came from. And the radius, 7, because if I square root 49, that's how I'm getting 7 for the radius. Okay? So let's try some other ones here. So it wants the center and the radius for each. So the center and the radius. So remember, center is opposite of h and k. So opposite of -4 is +4. Opposite of -1 is +1. And the radius, we have to square root 89 or 81 to get 9. For the second example, the center, well, there's nothing with x. Remember, if there's nothing there, that means 0. And the opposite of +5 is -5. To get the radius, remember we square root this number. The square root of 121 is 11. The last one, for the center, opposite of +7 is -7. The opposite of negative 9 is positive 9. And for the radius, if I square root 1, we still have 1. Okay. The last type of problem you could be asked is when you're given the graph of a circle. Okay? You need to identify the center. Then count from the center to a point on the circle that is either directly vertical or horizontal. So that means left, right, up, or down. And that distance is the radius. Then we're going to plug in our h, k, and r into our equation. So if I look at this first one, first my center is at 1, 2, 3, 4, negative 5, negative 5. Now to get the radius, I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4 up directly. So my radius is 4. So this is just like the front. We have h and k, and we have r. Plug it into standard form. So it'd be x plus 5 squared, because it's opposite of negative 5. Y plus 5 squared, opposite of negative 5, equals the radius squared. So 4 squared is 16. The last example for these notes is this one. So this one, the center is 2, 4. That's our h and k. And the radius is 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have the radius is 4. So again, we're going to plug that into standard form. So opposite of positive 2 is minus 2. So x minus 2 squared plus, it'd be y minus 4 squared, opposite of positive 4, equals the radius squared. So 4 squared is 16. The next set of notes, still working on the same idea, which is why these videos are together, is called standard form given center and point on a circle notes. So for this one, we have to look at this and say, in order to write an equation of a circle in standard form, there are two things that we need, just like we've been talking about. We need the center of the circle, and we need the radius of the circle. We cannot write an equation of a circle without those two things. So when we're trying to write the equation, what we've been doing is we plug in h and k into our standard form and the radius. But now they're going to give us the center and the point on the circle. They're not going to give us the radius anymore. We're going to have to figure that out. So the steps to do that, we're going to have to plug in the center, h and k, into our standard form. Remember, standard form was x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals the radius squared. So we're going to plug in h and k. So I'll circle h and k in red. We plug those in for h and k. And I'll circle in blue. They're going to give us a point. Points are always x, y. So we're going to plug in x and y also into our standard form. Okay? Then we're going to have all numerical values on this side of our equation that we're going to simplify, and it'll simplify down to a number. Once you have that number, okay, so you're going to take the square root of both sides. That's how you get rid of the squared, and that's your radius. Then you'll have the center, you'll have the radius, and we will write the equation of the circle. So let's look through this example before we do one on our own. So it says, write the equation of a circle that has a center of 3, 5, and the point on the circle is negative 1, 2. So center is h and k, point on the circle is x and y. So they plugged in. For x, they plugged in negative 1. For h, they plugged in 3. Y, they plugged in 2. K, 5. We didn't plug anything in for r because that's what we're trying to find. So now you have to follow order of operations, parentheses first. So in parentheses, negative 1 minus 3 is negative 4. 2 minus 5 is negative 3. Okay, so we did the parentheses first. Then you do exponents. Negative 4 squared is 16. Negative 3 squared is 9. We add those together to get 25. To get rid of the squared, we would square root both sides, which is where we got 5. So technically all you need for the equation is the radius because they already gave you the center. So they plugged in HK and they squared the radius to get the final equation. All right, so now let's try some on our own. So they give us this one, the center is 6, 2, so that's H and K. And the point, 5, negative 3, is X and Y. So we're going to plug those in. So I have, let me write the standard form so you can watch everything that I plug in. So that's standard form. So X is 5, so I'm going to plug in 5. Minus H is 6 squared plus Y is negative 3 minus K, which is 2, and it still equals R squared. So now order of operations. 5 minus 6 is negative 1. Negative 3 minus 2 is negative 5. Evaluate. 1 squared is 1. Negative 1 squared is 1. Negative 5 squared is 26. 25. Equals R squared. Technically, we can stop here, just like it says up here. Technically, this is all you need for the equation. Because in our standard form equation, we have R squared. So we have our center. We have R squared. 1 plus 25 is 26. Plug in these points to standard form. So I'd have X minus 6 squared plus Y minus 2 squared equals 26. All right, one more. So here, the center is 0, negative 7. That's H and K. And the point, negative 5, 3, is X and Y. Plug in what we know. X, negative 5, minus H, 0, squared. Plus Y, which is 3, minus K, which is negative 7, equals R squared. Order of operations. Negative 5 minus 0 is negative 5. 3 minus negative changes to addition, so that changes to 10 squared. Negative 5 squared is 25. 10 squared is 100. Add those together, I get 125 for R squared. So I have my center, I have my R squared, because again, standard form, you need H, you need K, you need R squared. So I would now write my final equation as X squared, because H is 0, plus Y plus 7, because negative 7, you do the opposite, squared, and R squared is 120.